From the moment the world entered the hypersonic era, every military strategist knew one thing: the balance of global power would never be the same again. For decades, the United States held unmatched dominance in air power, missile defense, and long-range strike capability. But the emergence of hypersonic weapons faster than any jet, more unpredictable than any ballistic missile, and capable of outmaneuvering even the most advanced radar shields created a new battlefield, one where speed isn't just an advantage. And in this battlefield, a new rivalry began to rise. A rivalry that has pushed analysts, generals. What happens if the United States and Iran enter a direct hypersonic era confrontation? Tonight, you're not just watching another military breakdown. You're stepping inside a scenario that is keeping think tanks awake, fueling debates inside Pentagon halls, and shaking confidence across the Middle East. Because the story isn't about who has the bigger army. It's not about tanks or jets. It's about speed that bends physics. Speed that outpaces defense systems. Speed that gives nations the power to strike before an enemy even knows they've been targeted. That is what the hypersonic era represents. And that is why the USA vs Iran dynamic has become one of the most unpredictable standoffs of our time. For years, Iran focused on asymmetric warfare drones, missile swarms, naval harassment. But something changed. Recent advancements, public demonstrations, and strategic shifts have shown one undeniable truth. Iran wants to prove it can challenge the world's greatest power. Not by matching it jet for jet, or ship for ship, but by leaping into the next generation of missile technology. Whether their claims are exaggeration, strategy, or reality, the world doesn't know for sure. But in this era, perception itself becomes a weapon. Meanwhile, the United States has been defining hypersonic systems behind layers of secrecy programs so classified that even senior officials don't know the full details. And one chilling phrase that keeps resurfacing in defense documents: hypersonic dominance. But dominance means nothing if an opponent is unpredictable, and unpredictability has been Iran's strongest weapon for decades. Now imagine the rising tension. Intelligence reports hinting at new missile capabilities being moved to forward positions. U.S. surveillance satellites catching glimpses of unfamiliar launchers. The hypersonic era has turned every piece of information into a potential threat, and when both sides begin assuming the other might strike first, the world becomes a powder keg. So what would this showdown look like? Not in a cinematic, explosive, Hollywood sense, but in a cold, real, strategic world where decisions are made not by emotion, but by calculasi. The first phase wouldn't involve missile launches. The first phase would be detection: two nations trying to read each other's intentions faster than a missile can cross a sky. Intelligence networks would activate. Satellites would reposition. Electronic listening posts would crackle with intercepted signals. The U.S. would monitor missile bases, naval movement, drone activity. Iran would scramble its radar nets, alert coastal defenses, and activate early warning systems. In most military eras, a standoff gives time, but hypersonic weapons erase that luxury. When a missile travels at 5, 8, even 10 times the speed of sound, the warning time is reduced to seconds. That's what makes this rivalry so dangerous. Neither side wants to be caught reacting. Both sides want to be the one who sees first, moves first, and understands the other's strategy before anything happens. And here's where the tension gets deeper. The United States has layered missile defenses across the Middle East. They have advanced radar sites. But even the Pentagon admits that current systems were not designed for maneuvering hypersonic weapons. If a missile curves mid-flight, drops altitude, accelerates unpredictably, or uses atmospheric skipping, tracking becomes nearly impossible. And Iran knows this. Whether or not they possess true hypersonic missiles, just the belief that they might changes how the U.S. must plan and respond. On the other side, Iran knows it cannot withstand a full-scale U.S. strike. American air power alone, with F-35S, B-2 bombers, and long-range strike systems, would overwhelm conventional defenses. But Iran's strategy is not to survive a war, it's to avoid one through deterrence. Hypersonic claims, long-range missiles pointed at U.S. bases, fast-attack naval units, and drone swarms create an environment where the U.S. must think twice before acting too aggressively. In the hypersonic era, deterrence isn't about equal strength, it's about uncertainty. A radar blip mistaken for a launch, a missile test interpreted as a live strike, a drone accidentally crossing a border. Suddenly, analysts on both sides are thrust into a race of seconds. Iranian command centers go on alert. U.S. missile defense crews stand ready. Satellites feed real-time data into AI prediction models. Generals watch screens where the difference between peace and escalation is one misunderstood movement. And this is the cold reality. In the hypersonic era, the world is closer to miscalculation than ever before. When both nations believe their best defense is to move fast, The risk isn't intentional war, it's accidental war. But what would happen if the confrontation escalated? Not in destructive detail, but in strategy. Iran would likely rely on overwhelming U.S. bases with missile volume, knowing that even advanced defenses can only intercept so much. They would deploy drones as decoys, launch missiles from hidden sites, and attempt to overwhelm radars. Meanwhile, the United States would rely on precision, mobility, and complete air dominance. Stealth bombers would neutralize key launch sites. Drones would track mobile missile units. Electronic warfare would attempt to blind radar networks. Naval strike groups would move into position, creating pressure from multiple directions. The true showdown wouldn't be a single moment. It would be a chain of decisions, each one balancing on uncertainty. Hypersonic weapons would be the psychological battlefield, both sides knowing that whoever fires the first real hypersonic strike could trigger a global response. And this is why analysts say the hypersonic era is not defined by speed, but by hesitation. Because even the fastest weapon cannot outrun the consequences if miscalculation. Behind closed doors, diplomats would scramble, allies would push for de-escalation, military communication channels would activate to prevent misunderstandings, and somewhere inside a secure command center deep in the Persian Gulf or a classified Pentagon bunker, commanders would stare at screens showing flashing indicators, each one representing a moment where history could change. But this is the part most people miss. The real showdown is not missiles, it's perception. If Iran convinces the world it has functioning hypersonic capability, even without proof, it gains strategic deterrence. If the U.S. maintains its technological edge while preventing escalation, it keeps stability. The battle is fought through intelligence leaks, military demonstrations, satellite images, media statements, and psychological pressure. No more missiles need to fly for a showdown to exist. And this is why the world watches every announcement, every test, every naval movement, every diplomatic warning. The hypersonic era has created a silent arena where the most powerful nations on Earth compete without firing a shot. And the US vs Iran rivalry sits at the center of the arena, dangerous not because war is inevitable, but because miscalculation is only ever seconds away. This story isn't about predicting a war. It is about understanding the razor-thin line that separates peace from escalation in a world moving faster than ever before. A world where hypersonic weapons have turned distance into a myth, reaction time into a luxury, and perception into a weapon more powerful than any missile.